and welcome to the first CHURD webinar of fall 2022. I'm joining you from Treaty 1 territory, where University of Manitoba is located, and I'm honored and pleased that I'm able to work and live as a settler on this territory. I know that we all come from different parts of Canada, and we're joining morning, noon, and late afternoon. So welcome. I'd like to first introduce our keynote presenter for today, and I'd like to introduce Alan Davis, who's the President and Vice-Chancellor of Kwantlen Polytechnic University. I'm sure many of you have met Alan, met him in the higher education environment, met him in CHURD because he's been very involved with CHURD over the last number of years, delivering face-to-face and online programming. And he's also been very involved in the Canadian Society for Higher Education, in which he has received a membership with distinction. So I'm really pleased that he's able to take an hour of his time today to join us. We started talking, Alan and I, over the last about 12 months about some unique things that he's been doing as the pandemic sort of eases out or post-pandemic at Kwantlen, and what he's done with his attenuated campus university. So when I talked to him about 2 months ago, I said, would you be willing to share some of your experiences and some of your thoughts as we move forward in a post-pandemic world? What will work look like on campus for faculty, for staff, and for student perspectives? So I think you'll sit back and you'll enjoy a very interesting and engaging presentation. So welcome everyone. Thank you again, Alan. And at this time, I will turn off my audio and video and give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen, and hi, everybody. Hi from the West Coast. I'm here on the traditional ancestral lands of the Hunkamanam and Senchothan speaking peoples, in particular recognizing the Kwantlen First Nation who graciously bestowed their name on our university. And we thank all of the Indigenous peoples for sharing their land and resources with us in friendship and in peace. And we recognize our commitment and obligation to work tirelessly towards reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about what's been going on at KPU. First thing is I've done nothing. This is not my work. Everything that you're about to hear is really the result of what other people have done, and a remarkable achievement by the employees of KPU and the students at KPU, showing a lot of innovation and dedication and resilience. I'm going to talk a little bit about KPU. Well, first of all, the overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about KPU, how big we are, what we look like, the context for the changes that we underwent in terms of both public health policy during the pandemic and how money affected that. Interesting, we have an interesting story about our finances, how we surveyed students, employees about their own preferences, a bit of a focus on what happened with our teaching and learning, and some random thoughts at the end. And I don't think there's anything in particular I'm going to say that may not have been experienced elsewhere. Just maybe the mixture of things that happened are probably unique to KPU because we are a unique institution, being Canada's only polytechnic university. And we serve a unique region in BC as well. We have about 20,000 students at KPU, 25+% and growing international. And about 70% of our students are racialized. So we have a very, very diverse, visible diversity on our campuses, which one experiences right away. We have about 1,500 employees, about 900 of those would be faculty. We're the fourth largest university in BC. We are very urban, mostly a commuting campus. We have no student housing. People come and go as many urban institutions operate. And our operating budget right now is about $240 million a year, just to give you a kind of a sense of the scope. We serve this region of about 1 million citizens, which is itself very large. City of Surrey is going to be larger than the city of Vancouver shortly. and extremely diverse. And for those of you who don't know BC, we're that little yellow chunk, our region. Those are the post-secondary regions in BC. And we serve that region down in the left-hand corner on the mainland. And the little inset there, the lower mainland close-up, shows you the yellow area all the way from Richmond, the airport, going inland east to the border of the eastern side of Langley, and to the south, the river to the north, and the US border to the south. We have our 5 campuses spread across that region. As you can see, a little bit more detail. KPU Tech is a trades and technology campus. The others and Civic Plaza is more of a kind of a downtown campus serving mostly business programs. It's on the SkyTrain. Langley, horticulture, health, and brewing. We have apparently one of the best brewing programs in North America. And Richmond and Surrey have a wide array of science, arts, and business programs, including in Richmond, the Wilson School of Design. So these campuses are quite differentiated, as you can see. They're very lovely campuses in many different ways. They all have their own culture. It does make KPU somewhat complicated, and I'll come back to that later on. And these are the sites of the First Nations communities, going from the top right and going around sort of anti-clockwise. There's the Kwantlen, the Katzie, the Coquitlam, the Musqueam, the Swasan, and the Semiahmoo. And we obviously, and with their overlapping territories and our region, we have a very rich and interesting relationship with the land-based First Nations. And Surrey also hosts the largest urban Indigenous population in British Columbia, and one of the largest in Canada, I believe. We're also surrounded by, I suppose you can call them competitors or colleagues, doesn't matter whether it's to the lower right-hand corner, UFV out in Abbotsford, and students do go from Langley out to Abbotsford. You sort of go against the traffic. There's a lot of activity going north of the river to where the bulk of the post-secondary institutions are. KPU officially is alone in Surrey, although SFU has a campus, and UBC's just bought land and is going to be opening some health programs soon. So everybody's eyeing the South Fraser region as being fertile territory for growth, because it is the fastest growing region, certainly in Metro Vancouver. So here's the kind of students that we have. The international actually is above this, a little dated. The percentage of international students is higher now, probably up more, closer to 35%. And you can see the age group. The international students tend to be younger overall, but generally we serve younger students. We don't have a large adult learning population, and the demographics are pretty typical. International students tend to be here full-time, notionally full-time. They have to be in order to maintain their visa status, etc. And as you can see, there are at pretty well every higher education institution predominantly female. So nothing terribly unusual there. But the distribution, if you take arts and business, it's about 85% of our business. Science and Hort is growing and doing well. And there's a kind of a bit of, we've got both program students, and then students, of course, in business have to take courses from arts. That's why arts looked bigger in terms of the number of courses it offers, but the number of program students is smaller than business. And then you can see we've got academic and career preparation, trades and tech, health, continuing professional studies. We have some small offerings there, mostly in health. And the School of Design, although it's small, it is very much a flagship program at KPU. So it's complex. One thing we can talk about at KPU is you never quite know what's going to happen. People are, there's a high level of autonomy, this kind of cultural thing that I inherited. I think it was established partly because people are working on different campuses and figure stuff out for themselves. And my job is to try and make sense of all that, bring people together and get a sense of community as a total university. But even externally, you know, we have a lot of programs, we have a lot of politicians I have to run around. By the time I've met them all, it's time to start all over again. This large population, lots of employees, and in serving the fastest growing, most diverse region in British Columbia. I don't think on a percentage basis, still the fastest growing, that's probably Kelowna or somewhere like that. But in terms of raw numbers, the number of people moving into the South Fraser region is certainly higher than anywhere else. But there is this the complication of KPU in terms of the sheer diversity of programming, the distributed nature of what we do, and it's only increased as a result of the pandemic. And here is the pandemic in terms of the total number of patients who are hospitalized, which was the key issue. If you go back to the original, the whole point of having lockdown, of having all the measures that we undertook was because if hospitals get overwhelmed with COVID patients, then everything else goes to pot. So tracking the hospitalizations was very important. It flows from the number of cases, but now since nobody knows how many cases there are now, it's the hospitalizations that matter. So if you look at that, the first, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, the first that we went online like everybody else did in March of 2020. In about spring 2021, we realized that, okay, we're still online. We started to think about and ask questions about what's going to be the long-term impact of this on the way that we operate. So we did our surveys in both the fall and spring, the fall of 2020 and the spring of 2021. Then we were supposed to come back in the fall of 2021. We were told to go back. We didn't. We came back very, very slowly. We kind of broke the rules a little bit because we just weren't ready because of the nature of, particularly in Fraser Health, which is the main health authority, the highest incidents were still happening there. And then, of course, we had the Delta variant, which kind of showed up. And so we stayed away. We started coming back gradually. We started doing some face-to-face things like shops and labs and things. We're doing them very carefully with all kinds of measures. And then Omicron arrived, and here we are here. This is very interesting. You'll notice that the number of hospitalizations overall is still pretty high for the fall, particularly if you compare fall to fall. They're probably higher now than they've been in other falls. And of course, people are worried about a very intense flu season coming and new variants are arriving. So we're not through it yet. But because the level of vaccination is very high, and I must say, BC, we were very lucky in BC. The government was very steady. We had a strong public health officer, but there were issues where she was saying one thing, and we realized that we had to actually act slightly differently because we knew our own institution, we knew what we could do, we knew what the traffic was like around the institution, and we had to kind of put KPU and the safety of its employees and students first. We'll talk about that again. Financially, it's interesting. We thought we were toast when the pandemic occurred. We thought our international revenues were going to tank. Nobody was going to be able to travel. Lots of people thought the worst. But then if you look at last year, we had a $21 million surplus. Now, on paper, it's not $21 million, but in the end, the difference between the revenues and the costs was 21 million. We were able to invest then quite a bit of money back into student support. It was a very good place to be. And the reason is that international education did not slow down. Partly if students studied online while they were waiting for their visas. And once they got their visas, they'd figure out a way to get here, even if it took flying through 5 different countries to get to land here. They were very resilient, they were very resourceful, and they arrived. And in 2023, we're in the very fortunate position of being able to set our budget $25 million increase, mostly in salaries, to increase the workforce because of the success that we'd had in international education. And I know our friend Alex Usher will probably say, oh, this is all very, very risky. And we keep looking at it and we keep thinking, yeah, well, if there's a risk there, the risk is going to be something real. If we could get through the pandemic in this kind of shape, nobody predicted the pandemic. It happened. It was intense. We thought we were toast. No, we prevailed. And short of something really, really calamitous, which won't matter anyway, we think we're in pretty good shape. And we're now developing a 5-year fiscal plan where we conservatively predict our revenues, including the international education. But it is the single largest source of revenue. So here's how our revenues have gone up in the last few years. And you can see that the government grant is pretty steady. That's the blue bars there. And when you look at the green bar there, the level at which international tuition has grown. And now you can see, if you look at 21-22, the last fiscal year, international revenues exceeded the government grant, and then there's domestic fees and then ancillary. What the other revenue? Now, interestingly, the other revenue is likely, because of the way that our model has changed, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We don't get so much from parking, we don't get so much from the bookstore, we don't get so much from food services, because people aren't around as much. And that's one of the realities that we're facing, is that although it's nice to be back on campus, it's certainly not crowded. So let's talk about our students. We love our students. They really are quite amazing, and do some they come from all over the world, and they really do create a very rich environment. We talked to them in the fall of 2020, after we were well into the second semester of the pandemic. The summer was, the spring, of course, was chaos in trying to finish, because I think it was March 15th that we went online, and there was panic to try and get grades in and something worthwhile to finish up. Summer, then we were a bit better prepared. We have 3 semesters, so we had the summer actually to really test our systems. And a lot of other places that closed in the summer and then started in the fall didn't really have such a good, they could get ready, but they couldn't really continue to implement online learning. We used the summer of the fall of 2020 to really do a lot of extra training, a lot of extra intervention. So we did pretty well. And you'll see that when asked if they were interested in staying online or having part online, or they're okay with online, overall about 80% of the students said, yeah, that's okay, or in fact, I like it. They really like the flexibility. Pretty well all our students work part-time somewhere in some way, or they have other commitments, and the online environment created flexibility. I think they also appreciated the fact that they were staying safe. And so when we checked again, we check every year. In fall 2021, we're just doing the student survey for 2022. For fall 2021, that number actually increased. People became more familiar with it. They realized the advantages of having at least some of their courses online, or some parts of their courses online. And we also had a lot of data built in there. We really were interested, because the faculty seemed to think that they had to do everything synchronously like this, that they had to be lecturing in a synchronous mode, or asynchronously and blended. The students have certain preferences. They do. The asynchronous obviously is the most flexible, and flexibility seemed to be the key advantage that people were interested in. We also participated, and I don't know if you know the Collaboration for Online International Learning, COIL. It came out of the State University of New York, and now everyone seems to have adopted it, where you mix students internationally in courses which are then sort of articulated and accepted elsewhere. If you don't know COIL, it's worth looking up, and it could be one of the things. It's been sitting around, kind of bubbling along, a few keeners interested in it. Seems to have really expanded and become a part of a much bigger part, and a stable part of the opportunities for international education, not just for international students, but also for domestic students, of course, to engage in kind of global learning with peers around the world. And services were interesting. In our counseling department, for instance, which is about the most intimate thing that you can do really is sort of one-on-one counseling. There used to be a bit of an issue with no-shows. So people would set up appointments, the schedules were all set up, office hours were set, etc. And there was a certain percentage regularly of no-shows, and that evaporated. It turned out that online just made things much more convenient, and perhaps, for whatever reason, I don't know if they've explored it more, counseling had way fewer no-shows, and the counselors found themselves very busy on Zoom or Teams, whatever platform they were using, to engage one-on-one with students who needed help. And of course, as you can imagine, as many people did, there was a certain different type of stress and loneliness that occurred as a result of the pandemic. When we talk about employees, we had this great article, a very short article from Inc. I don't know, INC is a kind of an online corporate magazine. And it talked about Siemens, which is this huge German engineering firm, 380,000 employees globally. And the CEO came out with two statements around remote work. One, let's focus on outcomes and not the time spent, bums in seats in the office. It really doesn't matter where you are doing it. What matters is the work that you do. And secondly, trust and empower your employees. And that's kind of resonated with us. It resonated with me. And if I did, there's one thing that I can take some credit for, is that I could see that our success in maintaining business continuity, keeping the university going, and really not missing any steps along the way. I know there was some struggle of instructors, initially, particularly in that finishing the spring semester. But once they figured it out, things went very well. And we realized our employees really were doing the job. We could trust them. So with that, we also determined what their preferences were. And this was the survey in spring of 2021. And we said 77% prefer or were okay with a blend of both remote work and on-campus work. Some people have to come on campus. As their job is, if you're a facilities person, you pretty well got to come on campus, unless you can do it all from your phone and control all the system. By and large, you got to be on campus. And God bless them, they did that, and they kept the place clean and safe, etc. They put so many signs up and took them down, and decals on the floor, etc. And just to make sure that if anything did happen, if we had to come back on campus, they were ready. So only 10% wanted to work from home all the time. And we have a little bit of an issue now and again with people, particularly faculty, who say, well, now we're online, that's all I want to do, and they want to live on Salt Spring Island and they don't want to come back. And it's a bit of a struggle sometimes with accommodating all the preferences of all the faculty. But faculty have always been like that. But also there are some, we've actually hired some people now who do not live in our region, but they have expertise that we can't get anywhere else, and it turns out they can do their job from where they live, and otherwise we wouldn't be able to get this expertise without accommodating them to work remotely. And they seem very happy with that and very appreciative of that. And we're able to get the talent that we need. In terms of specifically teaching preference, this is kind of a funny graph, but just going from the right, you'll notice that about 22% of the faculty would like to have in-person only teaching. And that makes sense. We certainly encourage that. 35% say yes to being more fully online than before, and a large number, 56%, say, yeah, we can see that we are more blended than before. We're going to use some combination. We'd like to use some combination, or prefer a combination of both using online systems and as well as face-to-face interaction. And that's particularly true where you have practical, you can do things, the practical work on campus, but you can do the theory, as it were, online. So we leave a lot of freedom and discretion. There's no one size fits all, and we've really been able, I think, to trust our employees and make that doesn't not perfect. There are situations where either we are unreasonable or the employees are unreasonable. We have to kind of arm wrestle it to the ground. But by and large, you can see that the teaching preferences change substantially. I think if you've done this survey before, I think no, not sure you would have got the same spread of opinion about what their preferences would be. We really were a face-to-face, 100% face-to-face institution. And when you look at the actual offerings over the last few semesters, starting last fall, you can see that there were 40% online in the fall of 2021, because we were actually still not really back. We were supposed to be back fully, but we couldn't come back fully. It was just not safe. We had to give people a lot of discretion to maintain being online. And there was probably a lot of blended as well. People would, as I say, come in, do their labs and shops and studios, but they do a lot of didactic teaching online. The spring of 2022, 25%. We're starting to come back now. Sorry, 32% in the spring, and then the summer, which was almost completely back face to face, as it were, 25% were fully online. And if you come to this semester now, this is slightly different data, but it's a kind of an interesting one. There's actually 29% of the seats, of the filled seats, that is, if you take the number of sort of students in the sections, were fully online. 29% were, and it's starting to settle into this kind of 70-30 fully face-to-face versus fully 29%, and 40% if it's fully or partially. So the sort of partly face-to-face, partly. So you can see that it's starting to settle into a new arrangement. As opposed to being 100% on campus, we are now somewhere in the range of 30% fully online and 40% in some kind of blended mode. So one thing that really happened as a result of this is that people rushed to the Teaching and Learning Commons, and they were quite remarkable. They pivoted, they created this framework for how to reinvent yourself. Give a great opportunity, of course, to take what you've been doing face to face for could be many years, many decades, and start again. Think about your design, think about your assessment, fit that into new notions of inclusive teaching and the use of technology, put that into a frame of reflective practice and put it all together. And now you have a new a mode of teaching excellence. And we had this foundation of teaching excellence approach, and I'm not saying every faculty member participated in it, but hundreds did, and which is pretty amazing for highly autonomous faculty who are not forced in or obligated in any way. They sought help, they got help. I think they appreciated the help, and they appreciated the opportunity to actually rethink what they were doing, and as a result, improve it. And of course, for educational technologies, we created people wanted to start doing videos and have capture short videos which they could post and students could view. Video conferencing and capture. We have PebblePad as our e-portfolio system, and you can see the growing use of that e-portfolio system. Trying to create more interactive learning as a result, using the technology, and just sheer content creation. And one of the key areas of content, I'll talk about it in a minute, is the Z-Cred stuff. And infrastructure, you can see that we had an opportunity actually to refresh all our furniture and make it much more flexible and engaging, although it's an unfortunate picture because everybody's lined up facing the front. But the fact is you can reconfigure these rooms, of course, in any which way instantly. And we started making sure that everybody was fully equipped, and in order to be able to not only just work remotely, but also to transfer and start adopting technology in many different ways. And changing the way that they work, both as employees and as faculty. We also sponsored a whole number of different, usually by giving release time to people to explore and innovate. This is all happening during the pandemic, and we were very pleased to see the uptake on that. We were lucky to be able to have the resources to deploy to that. Obviously, our costs went down by being online, and we tried to transfer some of the benefits of that into more support for faculty who were rethinking what they were doing. And one of the great things on the content side is this: we were leaders in open education resources and practices, and we have this ZTC, zero textbook costs. We now have pretty well have I don't know how many credentials we have for which there are no textbook costs. We adopt or we create open textbooks, and I think KPU can be arguably one of the leaders in Canada on this. It started before the pandemic really came into its own. Because one of the other things that happened in the pandemic, it created a focus on various areas of social justice, and the Black Lives Matter re-emergence as a result of the George Floyd incident. We established a task force on anti-racism. They worked during the pandemic, just filed a report that is very, very strong and which has a lot of recommendations which we're about to adopt. We engaged in EDI for employees, and we've accepted the 50-30 challenge, a federal challenge for senior leadership. And we have an Indigenous Pathways strategy that's been developed. And we've done a lot of work during the pandemic and since we came back to really advance our indigenization of the institution. And we've got a long way to go. But what's interesting is that somehow the pandemic kind of maybe it gave us a bit more time and energy to devote to these things and say, we've really got to do a lot more. And we now have an AVP for Indigenous Leadership Strategies and Pathways. And we're really excited with some of the ideas that she's bringing forward. One of the things on the policy side is that we suddenly had to inspect our policies to try and help students, and having done that, it turns out the first one was that first semester using the Agritat grade for students who, to finish the semester in good standing, to get a passing grade, but not have it count towards their GPA, just so that they could get they could complete the semester and be ready to go on. And then changing the add drop deadlines and the withdrawal deadlines, we've actually stuck with those. It turns out they're actually better policies for students and help them. And doing alternatives to high stakes final exams and to provide library access. The libraries never closed. They were always open for students, particularly international students who needed a warm place with good Wi-Fi to do their studies. Of course, we had laptop loan programs. So there was a lot of things that we did to try and make sure that the students were well looked after and could finish in good standing what they'd started. So what we think will stick, the sort of unintended collateral, first of all, access and flexibility, students, governance, events, PD, etc. There are a lot of things that we can do by using either online or virtual systems. Pretty well all our governance is now done on Teams. It makes it so much easier. The attendance is better, the participation is better. People are not driving. It's difficult driving around the South Fraser region to get to meetings, and that's really evaporated. A renewed interest in pedagogy and assessment, of course, advances in EDI, decolonization and anti-racism. It's hard to know, whether that was prompted by or would have happened anyway, but it just feels as though we got moving on some things that we couldn't, that had been dangling for a while. new student support, the compassionate rules, health and wellness, I think for both employees and students is now a much higher profile, looking after each other as we had to in the during the pandemic. Sustainability, obviously there's less carbon, less commuting. The parking lots are really not as full as they used to be, which means that fewer people are driving across the region. We're going to have to rethink space. If there's only 70% on campus now, then that means we have to be very careful about building more space when we don't need it and renovating space, particularly creating dedicated spaces for programs that need it, and not just having empty classrooms, more study spaces, etc. And communications, I think, trusting employees and staying connected. I did weekly videos during the pandemic, trying to maintain some kind of sense of collegiality. So just a few random thoughts before I close. KPU is an employer and a workplace, and we're a university. You know, people sort of think, well, there's business and industry, then there's the public sector, and there's the universities. Well, no, we're actually an employer, and what we do, I think, has impact, and we have the freedom, and I think the luxury to experiment with things which might help other sectors. Well, there was no incidents of transmission that we're aware of, but we never closed. So we did a very good job, I think, of handling the pandemic as an institution. We identified what the pandemic exacerbated and brought into focus, whether it was through anti-racism or indigenous issues. We knew that there were certain communities that were suffering more. I think it inspired us to really get moving on some of these things. Health and wellness, I mentioned the nature of human engagement. And I remember when one university in BC that will not be mentioned, when they were insistent on coming back on campus way too early, I think, and citing the magic of the campus experience was missing. And lo and behold, they started off with frat house parties where there was huge spreading of the virus. And you kind of think, is that really what universities are going to do? There is magic, obviously, in human engagement, and we did miss it. But I like to think if we're going to get together, if we're going to take the time and effort, for some people it's very difficult. There's daycare, there's all kinds of other things, pet care, in my case, travel, etc., dressing up. If we're going to be together, let's make it really worthwhile. Online plus face-to-face. What I worry about is that it seems like I have a lot of meetings. I still have a lot of meetings. I'm working from home today, so I have a whole list of things to do. But then they add the face-to-face, and it seems like surely something should be. There should be a choice. You know, if I'm going to be face-to-face, do I also have to be online? It seems like there is more work. I'm going to have to sort that out. There are some issues that you just have to be face-to-face, particularly personnel issues. Some new issues. I mean, inflation is really starting to bite. We've got students who can't afford to eat properly, and we're trying to figure out how we can support them. Student housing has come to the fore again. Cost of rental accommodation in this region is very bad. And there's kind of a me first approach that's starting to be evident. I think this is noted in society generally. Loyalty to the workplace, loyalty to the university, loyalty is kind of secondary to, well, what's best for me? I mean, we can't help but think that, but it seems to be becoming more obvious. We're going to have to watch that. Lots of new skills. We're all kind of more aware of cybersecurity, and we have training that comes out all the time, which we're expected to take. Technical skills, just using audio visual, being able to be seen and heard in a way online, which is very important. Some people still don't seem to be able to figure out how to be seen and to speak in a way that or have a microphone system that is useful. And then the fire drill. We had a fire drill. the other day. Well, it was an accident. I think somebody pulled the fire alarm, and all of a sudden we realized that the people, people in each department are given a certain task. They have a walkie-talkie, they have the jacket, they clear out all the rooms. Well, some of those people weren't there. So we realized if there's going to be this sort of mixture of remote and on-campus work, then we're going to have some redundancy in things like the fire marshals to make sure that there's always somebody there who can do what needs to be done in an emergency. Did want to just share with you, and I don't know if we can do this, but I will try. This was how we had virtual graduations, and one of the nice things that came out of this was, in fact, a new approach to the national anthem, which I'd like to share with you. I'm just going to, if I can disconnect this and then play it for you.
Our university region includes the land of the Kwantlen. Glorious and free, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee, for thee, Please be seated.
Sorry, I'm going to try and join back here. Okay. Hi, that's my pitch. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop sharing, and maybe I can see you then. Can you hear me, Kathleen?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, good.
I guess, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. And I know you said I'm going to stop now, and I hope that we have some time for discussion.
Yeah.
What I can do is ask people to raise their hand. I have the list also right here, and we can also enable your microphones.
Could you hear the national anthem? It was a bit of a fudge, but okay, good. It's also available on the website if you want to click that link. I can't actually see anybody.
You won't see anybody, but you'll see the participants on the side. The
okay,
names,
yes.
I can see them. And so
Yes.
I'm sure that you might have some questions
Oh.
from participants. I just wanted to ask you a question first, just barging right in. I just wanted to ask you, you talked about health and wellness. Did you have to take any special strategies regarding mental health? It's certainly lack of, attenuated faculty that may be not as engaged. What was your experience regarding work, and how are you looking at this in post-pandemic work?
I think the main thing that we could do was to make sure that the information that we could provide both to employees and students was up to date, was comprehensive, and here are the resources that you can go to. I mean, it was just a matter of realizing that people needed the right information, they needed the right links. We didn't sort of develop something. The student services came to us and said, we need to talk about health and wellness, and we certainly we gave them some money to go develop the longer term strategy, and we'll be starting to roll that out. So I think it accelerated their agenda to provide a really broad range of health and wellness. Years ago, we canceled varsity sports because we were spending $1 million a year on it, and only a few students really benefited. So we canceled it and redistributed the money into a kind of a broad recreational, and then that's kind of morphed into more of, and the health and wellness comes a lot out of the recreation area. And we would have, we had this great sort of webinars on how to stay well, how to stay physically well, and exercises you could do with your chair at home and things like this while you were working. So and then on the employee side, we also developed this thing called KPU Engage, and human resources led this teams of people for different employee categories to try and think of things to keep people engaged, and activities that they could do together, sort of social activities and clubs, if you like, so that people could feel as though they were still connected to the university, albeit remotely. And what's interesting now is how much of that will now continue. Have we been able to build more collegiality through the pandemic that we can now leverage to, because people are on different campuses anyway. I mean, there's a lot of people who go to work on one campus and don't see the others. We're trying to bridge that and connect people, and make them feel better connected to their workplace and to the university.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to know if you can see the questions, Alan. If not, I'll just say we have a question in the chat from Andrea Pinsett. Has the work started to repurpose space? Has there been any challenges with repurposing office space for employees?
Well, we've just started on it, actually. I can't say that we've made a lot of progress yet. It's kind of, space is one of those things that it's very close to people's heart. And you would think, for instance, if we're 30% online, that we should be able to actually lock 30% of the classrooms. We haven't done that yet, but there is, at some point, if things aren't moving, we will simply just sort of isolate, so take rooms off the booking system, and in a strategic way, and say, because there are some ideas that we have for the reuse of space to create more good study space for students, for instance, and faculty offices, perhaps, they were never very good. Maybe we need to change that and create more of a sort of airport lounge drop-in notion, but you can't do that unless you identify the space and then take it out of the booking system. So the first step, I think, is to identify those spaces, take them out of the booking system. But we have good people, and we have a committee that works on space. And we did actually launch a few new programs in Richmond, in the Richmond campus. That involved a lot of moving people around. The same issues applied. People had sort of squatted in certain space and then didn't like being told they had to get out of it. They were never assigned the space, but they took it. And so I would say that it's clearly on the radar. I think everybody's expectation is that we can do it, and that's a good thing. Instead of it being some sort of thing you don't even want to approach or talk about, I think people expect now that we are going to do things with our space to reflect this new reality.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if you saw the next question, Stephanie.
No, I didn't see. I can't seem to see the questions. I'm sorry.
Okay, Stephanie Allen, thanks, KPU alumnus and pre-pandemic KPU staff member and student affairs. Thank you. Considering the online preferences for students at KPU, have you seen a decrease in student engagement? How about retention of students?
I don't think we know that yet. We've certainly worked very hard since we came back on campus, and it's been kind of gradual. That's the thing. If there was a very clear spot, like some universities sort of said, okay, we're back in September, everybody came back and they could sort of do the before and after measurement. We've kind of gradually come back. And the other thing is, we're an urban campus, and people, 70% of our domestic students, or over 70% of the domestic students, live at home, and they have a life. They have families, and they have friends in the community, and they don't rely on the university for engagement outside of class, obviously. But we do work very hard, particularly with the international students, to make sure there's lots of activities. And we just had this huge Diwali party a couple of weeks ago, which the students organized and hosted, and it was wonderful. And there's no lack of engagement, certainly from the international students. I think they really enjoy being here. The campuses, there's a bit more room on the campuses. They were all clean and nice and new furniture when they returned. So that I get a sense that there's a lot of smiling faces and a lot of sort of happiness on campus right now, whether it's just happiness to be back on campus, and seems to be a lot of activity. I think it's going to take a while. I think the Student Association is struggling to kind of reestablish what it used to do with lots of clubs and things. It's going to take a little bit of a while to understand. What we will look at the student satisfaction survey this fall to see whether there's been any change over the last couple of years, because this is really the first year that we can say, yeah, we're although we're in a new mode, this is now we're back on campus, and we should see more student engagement. And of course, there is not just on campus, but also online. Retention, I think, is fine. I don't think we've seen any problems with that. It's a good question, though. I think I'll run away and have a look at it. This is where I need my institutional research people, because they have the answers to all this. But nobody has raised it as an issue at this point. And we've grown as an institution. We've got more students now, and they seem to be graduating and staying with their studies just as well. So thanks for your question.
And we have another question, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Amy Anktel. I appreciate the emphasis on EDI, indigenization, and anti-racism. In terms of recommendations, what is the biggest change that faculty, staff, and students saw on campus with the university as an institution?
Well, the fact that we are talking about it and setting expectations. We had a wonderful event, an in-person event where that many people showed up to for the launch. We kind of made the launch of the Task Force on Anti-Racism report an event. It was kind of hard because everybody wanted to see the report, and it was kind of floating around as we're very carefully. The task force, and they were free to. There was no interference in this. They really wanted to launch the report. They wanted to make sure that the reaction of the university was going to be noted, and it was. And it was very successful, and I think it raised a lot of interest around the institution because they did it as a very special thing. It didn't just sort of, okay, we'll stick the report on a website and there it shall stay. We made it an event. I made commitments as president. It was video streamed so that people could watch it live. And so I think people already are much more aware that we established a new position, an AVP for anti-racism. We're about to recruit for a vice president to oversee all these activities. I think these things are really starting to resonate across the institution. And there's a lot more sort of opportunities for training. There's lots of webinars like this. There's programs. The leadership team is taking a program offered through BC Campus on indigenization, which is a 7-series program, and everybody shows up. It's great. I mean, it really is just raised, I think, people's awareness of and engagement with, and by and large, it's extremely positively received. Thank you.
Okay, and I think we have one last question. Cara Loy, could you speak to any differences or nuances in instructors' abilities and attitudes to respond to and preferences for online versus face-to-face or blended or hybrid teaching?
Well, I think they have changed. Obviously, I mean, all I can say is sort of repeat that we were 100% face-to-face. People did use technology in various ways. Some people would post their notes and this, that, and the other. Now everybody does. So there is, first of all, that kind of wholesale underlying teaching with technology shift. Even if you're in the classroom, you're going to use Moodle. You're going to have a Moodle site. You're going to use it. There's going to be a lot more using the affordances of technology to stay connected, etc. And I mean, hundreds of faculty took the sort of teaching, learning to teach online course. They genuinely wanted to learn how to do this and how to do it well. And again, that whole expectation, whole awareness of what technology enables, what technology is not good for, how can I use it wisely, etc., is certainly there. In terms of their abilities and attitudes, we did have one employee engagement survey, which showed that actually, and I think it was because employees felt very much kind of respected and trusted throughout the pandemic, and the level of engagement overall of employees went up. We kind of have it's always very low at KPU when we do employee engagement surveys. We don't get very good results, and they went up during the pandemic. Now the question is, are they going to stay up? Because people, I think, felt that they were trusted, that they were empowered during the pandemic. Is that going to sustain itself? And is it going to be reflected in generally their attitude towards, as you say, the combination of online versus face-to-face? Do they feel as though they are supported in terms of how they believe this instruction should take place? I'm sorry, I wouldn't know the nuances. I'm not that close to it, but it's a great question. I think I'll take it away and think about it. I'm sure later on today I'll have a really great answer for you, but I'm not aware of anything in particular except for this overall awareness of the possibilities. And I'd like to be a fly on the wall in certain departmental meetings to see, so is this going to continue now? Is this interest and energy around shifting teaching, is that going to continue and kind of get hardwired into the institution? Anyway, I think our hour is up, Kathleen.
Yes, thank you. I think that was the last question.
Thank you.
I just wanted to let people know housekeeping. This will be on the CHURD website, so you can certainly have a look at it. And it should be give us a little bit of time to get it posted. So I have a terrible. Alan, are you still there? All right, this is an extreme. Well, I'm not quite sure what happened, whether he lost his connectivity. I wanted to thank Alan especially for this really interesting opportunity to chat and to share experiences. And I want to thank all of you very much for attending. And we'll be 2 weeks from now gathering again to talk about some of the challenges with university governance going forward and the relationships in universities with governance. We'll be joined by Cheryl Foy, who's a former university secretary and labor lawyer for this program.